Hello, my name is Alexander Morari, and I'm the founder of ITKeyMedia. You've tuned into our podcast about Central and Eastern European startups that are in pre-Series A stage. And our guest today is Paweł Zawadzki, the co-founder of MNM. That's a company using advanced AI-based and AI-driven innovative software tools for rapid and effective cancer diagnosis, prediction, and prognosis. Cześć, Paweł.
Hello, Alex. Great to actually be part of it.
Look, it seems from my research that MNM is at the forefront, not only of Polish or European, but global, basically global effort to try and unfold the mysteries of cancers based on AI. Is that so? Or is it not too modest to describe you like that?
No, I mean, it is a global fight against cancer we are taking part of. And there is no boundaries for cancer patients, and the research is actually happening globally. So I spent quite a few years in UK, Oxford, doing genomics, and then I've realized that there are problems where you can actually approach them anywhere. So it doesn't matter where you work, you actually are solving universal problems, and you have to work with people around the globe. I mean, if you think that you can build a great company or solve a big problem with your friends from your town, wherever the town is, you are in troubles. I mean, you have to be collaborating worldwide, and this is exactly what we are doing.
Paweł, it seems that what you mentioned right now is probably characteristic of something called like deep tech kind of space. Quantum computing is very much like that. AI driven, like at the far front of medical diagnosis or cancer fight, as you say. That's where the scientific fraternity probably is less of a mask and more of a reality. And of course, this is not like that in like non-deep tech spaces. Would you agree with that?
Sure. I mean, because the problems we are solving are so universal, and the resources which are required to solve this problem are so huge. Normally, the source of discoveries is actually the academia. So most of the data we are using, most of the tools we continue to develop and improve, they actually were born at best universities. So these are Harvard University, Cambridge, and so on, and so on. And that actually makes all of the work global, because you have to rely on these fantastic people, fantastic group leaders, the programs which sequence thousands of patients. Not a single company can go and sequence 100,000 cancer genomes. But the government can, and the government do. But they do it in US, Australia, Germany, UK, and they share. And this is a hugely important factor for this kind of approaches we are following, is without sharing of the data, loads of the discoveries would not be possible. So we are part of this trend where we also share loads of data, not all of it. We actually have some of the IP protected, because otherwise you can't build the company. But we believe in sharing the data, and we share as much as we can.
I've also always wanted to ask somebody who is specialized in cancer diagnosis, treatment, like science and medical kind of background, whether or not cancer is a consequence of advances of the civilization. And basically, cancer is very often a derivative of more advanced age that human population can reach, basically. How true is that, or how completely rubbish this is?
So there is a little bit of truth there. So cancer is a genomic disease. So imagine that your cells are not going to be accumulating mutations. Then you'd never get cancer, actually. And the issue is that the mutations accumulate because your cells keep dividing. And the older you get, the less accurate the DNA repair pathways are. So when you are a baby, you actually have a fantastically accurate DNA repair pathways. So there are cancers observed in children, but there is not that many of them. But the older you get, the less effective the pathways are. And actually, you had more time to accumulate some mistakes. So what is happening is that the older you are, the higher the likelihood of getting cancer is. So yes, it is a derivative of the evolution of our society and economy, but it's simply because we're getting older and older.
There's more
somehow
math. You want to say there is more mathematics in this than socioeconomics, right? Just because of the probability, the odds increase with time. Yeah, okay.
These are only the probabilities and accumulation of the mutations, because imagine that every cell division, you have 3 mutations by chance, randomly. And then, of course, by the age of 30, maybe you had like 10 billions of cell divisions. But then in next 20 years, you're going to get another 5 billions of chances that the mutation will actually hit an important gene and the cancer will develop. So this is a stochastic process, and this is a pure chance. So statistically, it's just more likely to get these mutations when you are older. And this is what we observed. The statistics is supporting that very strongly.
Okay, so mutations are freak in the system of the replication of DNA, clear. And you could accumulate with time the negative outcomes. What about positive outcomes? We do not hear of superpowers as a result of age-based mutations or problems in the DNA repair paths and so on and so on. Why don't we mutate into superheroes?
We actually do, but the issue is you have to use a very different perspective. Okay. So 99.99 or even more % of mutations are actually harmful. But every now and then you have a mutation which gives you a positive feature. You might be a little bit stronger, you might live a little bit longer, your muscles may contract faster. But the issue is you have to wait several thousand years to have the effect which will stick to the particular individual. And then if you look at monkeys, and if you look at us, we are quite different. We have massive brains which operate in the way the monkey's brain will never, ever operate. And this is purely due to mutations, because some of them were beneficial and some of the monkeys suddenly managed to imagine something or create an idea of a tool. Yeah. And this is purely to the skill of the brain, which was a consequence of a mutation, but you have to wait like 100,000 or 500,000 years to actually see the effect of that. Whereas when the mutation is harmful, you're going to see it immediately by having a disease. Wow. Very unfortunate, though.
Paweł, great. That's enough for the warm-up. Let's get back to the scenario then and start with the product. Round 1, solution, the product. And let's start with the all-encompassing platform that you basically came up with, the GEMA AI, and that's a trademark, I should say. How would you describe GEMA and AI, and what are the constituent parts or elements of this platform?
So first, the very basic background. So when you think about diagnosing tumors, this is the problem which has been recognized for hundreds of years. And initially, what people have been doing is they would take a microscope, look under the microscope what kind of tumor cells are there, and say, oh, these are big cells, we're going to treat them this way. But that didn't work particularly well, because just seeing the cell tells you very little. So then over the years, different methods have been developed. But then at the end of the day, what you want to test is DNA, because tumors' DNA is what defines the behavior of DNA, the sensitivity to particular drugs. Everything is within the DNA. And like 20 years ago, sequencing of the DNA was kind of like a standard. And we are at the stage of the development of treatments or selection of the treatment where what we say as an MNM is, look, when you go to a clinician, the clinician is going to test 0.1% of your DNA. Why would you do such thing? And the answer is because it was too expensive, because technology was not existing. And all of these arguments were true 10 years ago, but they're not true today. Because today we can actually analyze 100% of tumor genome. And now we have tools which allow us to take this enormous amount of data and convert it into valuable clinical information. And this is exactly what we do. So we can develop now technologies which actually help clinicians to make a decision, because 10 years ago, the technology to sequence 100% of your DNA was not only developed, but it was made affordable. It's not as expensive as it was like 20 years ago. So now technology is affordable, but you have an issue that you get huge amount of data and what you do with the data. So 10 years ago, people would say, oh, you have to take an Excel and find these particular mutations, and then you make a decision. But if you take like 3 billion letters from your tumor DNA, you can't use Excel to actually do this exercise. So you need sophisticated tools. And this is what we are building. So GEMMA is a platform which is using loads of computational power, sophisticated algorithms, AI, to actually analyze this data. And instead of giving this data to clinician, the platform is saying, oh, this patient should not use PARP inhibitors, but it can use ATR inhibitors. It's extremely likely that this person will respond to this particular treatment because there are some information within the tumor genome which indicates that that's going to happen. And this is what we do. We look for markers, we call it biomarkers. We look for everything what is within tumor genome. We understand why tumor actually developed in the first place. And with all of this information, you can actually go to a clinician and say, look, because we found this set of biomarkers, this is extremely likely that the patient will respond to ATR inhibitors, because when we look at clinical cases of patients who did respond to this particular treatment, all of them has these biomarkers. And then the clinician can make a right judgment, because you have to understand the tumor in order to select the right drug. So GEMMA as a platform is actually helping clinicians to make these decisions by analyzing enormous amount of data and translating it into something which a clinician can understand.
Each person cancer, I understand, has a unique pattern of biomarkers, right? And what you now described, this is all customized for a specific patient, right? So that's what you're trying to do. This is not like this patient, okay, this patient can be in the category 38, and this is what we can advise. It's actually one solution for one specific patient. And this, how repeatable one pattern in a patient can be in other patients? Or is this completely specific and unique for one specific person with the tumor, let's say?
So how many people on the planet are identical to you or to me?
Zero?
Zero. Maybe you will find someone who is very, very alike.
Close, okay.
Very close, but they're not going to be identical. And this is exactly like that with tumors.
Okay.
So tumors have thousands of mutations. So every single tumor is different. So what you do is we recognize patterns. So this is what the AI is becoming better and better at. You recognize patterns. So we can have two tumors with similar patterns. Yeah. And if you have these patterns, then what you have to do is you have to look at the patients who's been treated with particular treatment and ask, so what pattern does this patient have? And if you know that this patient responded to particular treatment, and you have the second patient with exactly the same pattern, different mutations, but the pattern is similar, we know that it's very likelihood that with this pattern, the tumor will respond to the same drug as the other person who already been given a treatment. And we look for patterns, we look for similarities. There are always differences, but there is enough similarities to actually group patients as responders together. And this is what actually our algorithms are doing. They're saying, oh, this patient belongs to this cohort. This patient belongs to the other cohort. And the other cohort behaves in the way that they do not respond to this treatment, the other treatment, but they frequently respond to the treatment with any given drug. So this is how it works more or less with all the similarities. There are always differences, but we can see patterns, and that's what is important.
And what's exciting, this is both scientific, you could say scientific work, research. Basically, you have a hypothesis, and then you go and get arguments pro or con, and then adapt your kind of evolved hypothesis. Clear. But then,
exactly.
Yeah, but then it's also a business, right? So, and let's say your company is also a business. How could you please describe more on the business side? Like, how I understand you are on the far front of like deep tech, and it takes time, effort, money, and so on, like brain power, ability to expose some of your advances and then to hide critical things, not to lose the competitive edge and so on. Now, this is clear on the on this type, on this side. What about the business as such? How would you say advanced you are as a business, and what's your goal for this year, 2021, for the next year in terms of a business?
So, as it happened, COVID was, I know it's going to sound bad, but it was a blessing for us. And the reason is that what happened when COVID started is we actually had a proof of concept that the platform works. We knew that we can analyze thousands and thousands of genomes, but there was not actually many people using it because this is an advanced technology. So you have to prove that the technology works. So when we started talking to people about how the platform could be used, and the COVID started, we actually got quite a few questions whether, oh, look, it's quite likely that some people gonna suffer from COVID much more than others. So is there a possibility that you can actually apply the platform in a search for biomarkers for severe COVID, or to find the people who are not gonna suffer at all? And these are gonna be people who don't have to worry that much. And at the very beginning, we actually made that decision that we're gonna join the forces trying to understand COVID and fight COVID. So for past 15 months, we've actually generated a couple of $1 million of revenue because there was quite a few institutes using the platform to analyze the genomes from COVID patients. And we managed to find actually several genomic biomarkers, genomic positions, which can tell you whether you're gonna suffer from severe COVID or you're gonna go mildly. So for us, it was great because we got a massive boost in revenue.
Exposure, and interest.
Yeah, we got exposure. Wow. Now most of the work is back to the oncology. So oncology was the focus from the early on. But actually, when you think about it, it doesn't matter whether I ask a question, whether the patient will respond to a cancer treatment or to a COVID. So this is something which is affected by our genetic blueprint. So it was a great and fantastic. So business-wise, now we got much more recognition. So we got 2 papers in Science, 1 paper in Nature, which means that the technology we've been developing actually works. And now we are moving back to the cancer work and focusing on developing tests. So from the business side, when you have a platform is great, but you have to monetize it one way or the other. And of course, what we've been considering is to become a service provider to pharma companies. But very early on, we've decided that the platform is too precious to be actually used for that. So what we've decided is let's build the pattern, we call it biomarker signature, pattern which can predict whether the patient will respond to a particular treatment. So we've developed this kind of pattern for PARP inhibitors, CDK4/6 inhibitors, ATR inhibitors. And what we do is we protect the IP of this pattern, and we are developing diagnostic tools for this category of drugs. So this is the business model. At the moment, we have 2 patents which has been filed already. And we have 1 test which we are discussing with FDA how we should approach the clinical validation process, and 1 which is waiting till the first one is going to actually reach the market. So the goal is, and with a high likelihood, we're actually going to have the first product, which is a result of GEMMA, on the market at the end of next year. So that was super important for us because A, we've proven that the platform works, and B, we've produced a product which is going to be available to patients. And then we can actually keep bringing more products, because the lovely thing about the platform is that once you have it working, you can produce the first product, second product, and you can keep going, because there is hundreds and hundreds of different therapies available. Some of them have the guiding system, there's the biomarker information, but most of them are actually given without analysis of a tumor. And that's why loads of the companies offer drugs which have like 20% success rate, 30% success rate. And what we believe we can actually move it to like 70, 80 or even more once you have a good enough information and the pattern which is revealed once you actually analyze the 100% of tumor genome.
From a specific patient?
From an individual patient. Is always done for individual patients. So this is the true personalized medicine. When you take a sample from patient A and you ask them what patterns does this particular patient have, you don't ask whether this patient belongs to female age 45. So these female 45 years old, they often respond well to this treatment. Yeah. Oh, no. You take the tumor genome, you analyze all of the available information, and you make an educated guess, or you actually sometimes have a very, very good scientific prediction.
Look, and now, Paweł, tell me, how do you take the sample of tumor for DNA analysis? I mean,
so this is done.
Yeah.
So this is done in the hospitals during the biopsy or surgery. So in order to actually test whether a particular lump of cell is tumor or not, there has to be biopsy. So once the biopsy is taken, we just take part of the biopsy. So part of it goes to the histopathology, other part is used for traditional testing, and part of it, usually a third, if it is delivered to us, we can actually perform the whole genome sequencing and do the most accurate assessment of tumor type existing.
And technically, again, how this is transported to your physical location where? Yes. Let's take an example of a German patient, let's say.
So in every single country, and we're operating in 2 countries at the moment, so this is US and Poland, we have one central laboratory, and we have logistics sorted that once we have an agreement with the hospital is taking the sample, and the logistic and transport brings the sample to our lab where the sample is processed. And once processed, then it has to be sequenced, then it has to be analyzed on the servers, and then the pipeline has to be used, and the GEMA actually provides with a pattern, and the pattern gives you information about how likely it is you will respond to therapy A, therapy B, therapy C. So, and we deliver the report to a clinician, because at the end of the day, it's a clinician who is making a decision which drug to use. So we just, we are a toolkit for a clinician which delivers additional information, which helps to make a good decision.
So it's a more educated decision and better prepared decision by the clinician. And I understand you are just enabling what you're enabling this feedback loop, or feed forward kind of information loop, and give actionable insights into a specific patient, right? So that's
exactly
actionable insights. Wow. Okay.
Exactly, because our job is to deliver information to a clinician who can then make a right choice. And this is particularly becoming a problem now, because again, 10 years ago, no one would care. You would get one drug or the second drug, and there was like 2 drugs for this particular cancer type. But there is more and more treatment today. There are targeted therapies. There are therapies which work particularly well for this subpopulation of patients. And how the clinician is supposed to make this decision? I mean, if you have 20 drugs, how you make this call? We believe that we actually found a solution. You look at the patterns of changes within tumor genome, and that informs which of these 20 therapies should be used.
And the more information, the more kind of these information channels you have with every specific patient that prove your formula, the more accurate it's becoming, as a usual kind of evolution cycle of any AI-based kind of platforms, I would say.
We are always limited by the amount of data, and the more data we have, the more accurate the predictions are. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, for this round, 2 more questions I think I have. First, more kind of based with expansion. FDA, just for some people who don't know, probably FDA, if I remember,
Food and Drug Administration.
Food and Drug Administration, specifically covering US. But correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm right. If you go through the approval process in FDA that almost opens you easy similar processes in other Western markets. Is that so?
That is exactly the logic. So EU has its own regulatory body, but we found that FDA is actually more strict. And once you have approval in a more strict body, it's so much easier to actually go to EU, it's called EMA, and say, look, we actually recently got approval from FDA. So this is what we've done. What else would you like to see? And it's quite likely they're going to say, oh, that's actually enough. So thank you very much. Here is your approval. So the logic was to start from US, and US is also the most competitive and the biggest market. So for us, it was extra motivation because we know that we have to do an excellent work to actually compete with US companies and convince FDA that what we are doing is actually valuable for patients.
And how advanced this process is? Because I understand you applied a couple of months back in spring 2021. When do you expect to have the results?
So we actually got an instruction from FDA what we have to do in terms of convince FDA that the tests work. So what we have to do now is we have to prove in clinic with collaborations with hospitals that the results we are delivering are actually consistent with what we've observed in the retrospective study. So the first thing we've done, and for you to actually understand how the process works, once you build an algorithm which is making a clinical decision, you have to test it on patients who's been already treated. So we've collected, it was 150 samples from patients who's been already treated, and we made a prediction, and the results were already there. So that's the first step, and you test whether actually the algorithm works at all. And we got fantastic results with nearly 36 months added to benefits of people who were classified as responders. And then you take this data to FDA and say, look, this is what we've done on a retrospective study. So what data do you need to actually believe that it will work when we don't see the results? Because of course, the risk is that you kind of massage the data, and it is exactly what should be done. So what we are doing now is we are collecting samples from people who's been only recently treated with a particular drug, and they don't have the answer yet. So we are sending the result of the test, but no one knows whether the patient will respond or not. And in a year or so, what we're gonna see is, okay, that was your prediction. And the hospital can say, oh, it was all rubbish. Or they can say, oh, fantastic, you've predicted with the accuracy of 85%. So at the moment, in retrospective analysis, we have 85% of accuracy. And now the question FDA asks, so what's your accuracy when you actually do it in a prospective way? So we are at the stage where we are collaborating with hospitals, collecting samples, running a test in order to actually assess it in a real life. And with this data, you can go to FDA and they will decide that this is good enough. So you are free to actually market it for real patients. That's the protocol.
And so hospitals are also under jurisdiction of FDA, which means American, right? I understand. And do you recruit hospitals, American hospitals by yourselves, or they ascribe it to you?
So you have to do it all. You have to do it all on your own. So FDA is only guarding the rules and making sure that all's been done according to the book. But it is your job as a company developing the test to find collaborators and convince them that the test is worth to be tested. Sometimes we work with pharma companies because some pharma companies need diagnostic tools to actually convince FDA that the drug should be approved for usage with patients, particularly the drugs which have strong side effects, because the FDA has to make a decision. Should you be giving this drug to everyone, or should you be kind of making prediction and finding the patients who are more likely to respond to your treatment? So we also work with companies trying to solve this problem for them.
Yeah, although this cooperation might bring positive, but also could bring negative outcome, right?
I mean, but if the test doesn't work, it should not be marketed. And we accept the risk. There is a certain risk that if the tool doesn't work, it should not be marketed. It should be killed immediately.
And so I understand by default, we think that all pharma companies are fair play and transparent, and they have public interest as their priority. Clear. Yeah, let's say this is our default thinking.
It is.
Paweł, thanks a lot. Let's move on to the second round now, competitors and the competitive landscape. Just as you say, AI, which was kind of exotic 10 years ago, you could say, and just beginning its march on the globe. Today, anywhere, any parts of life, you can find somebody working based on AI. And of course, in your space as well. How, like, who would you name as your top 1, 2 competitors that you look up to, or you just need to catch up business-wise or otherwise? And how do you think you stand out from the crowd?
So in terms of competitors, it is a crowded environment because cancer is one of the biggest issues for all of the societies. And I think that we need like 10, maybe no more than 20 years to actually handle cancer well. And the reason why there is not that much time, I think it will take to control cancer well, is because there is a lot of great companies and the improvement was massive. 2 examples I'd like to actually give is Foundation Medicine and Tempus. These are 2 companies where Foundation has introduced genetic testing on a broad scale. So what they are doing is they are trying to convince the world that every single cancer patient should have a genetic test. And after listening to me for a couple of minutes, you say, oh, that should be obvious. No, it is not obvious. I mean, there is loads of cancer patients who never, ever have their DNA tested. So Foundation did a fantastic job in making people aware how important genetic testing is. But the issue with Foundation is that they are using technology which has been developed 20 years ago. So they are analyzing 0.1% of tumor genome. So 0.1% of the available information is analyzed by the technology they are using. So of course, 20 years ago, the technology we are using, I mean, it existed, but one genome sequencing was like $100,000. So it was not possible to use this technology.
Okay.
So we were fortunate over past years, the price has dropped. And we were fortunate that we were working on the forefront as an academics, because founders of MNM were actually academics, that we understood the potential of the technology which is out there, and this is AI and other software which can be used to analyze this data. So I have a huge respect to what Foundation did, but they are using 0.1% of information. And it just doesn't sound right. Why would you not use 100% of information and translate it into a clinical decision? And that's our competitive advantage. We are developing technology which brings much more information and which makes the prediction of the response just much more accurate. And when we think about the patients, the 40% accuracy, I mean, is great when you have nothing. But if you can choose between 85 and 40, I think you should go for 85, simply because technology is allowing you to do that. The second tech company, Tempus is doing a fantastic job in bringing the information from imaging, histopathology, genetics together, and they actually bring information from multiple angles. And the work they do is fantastic. The results they are producing are fantastic. But the only issue they've done is they've decided to, again, use a small proportion of tumor DNA. The reason they've done it is, again, when you start building a business and everyone around you is analyzing 0.1% of DNA, why would you ask this question, oh, perhaps 100% is better? No, you do what everyone else is doing. So they've incorporated the small fraction of this information into their pipelines. And as far as I'm concerned, they are now thinking of switching from 0.1% to 1%, because the platform they decide to use allows them to do that, but they can't switch to 100%. So what we are saying is, again, if we manage to discover loads of patterns for loads of drugs, we actually can overtake all of these companies, because with strong IP protection, even if they move to 100% of tumor genome, we're going to be there with our IP portfolio saying, oh, sure, but we've already discovered a pattern for this drug, for this drug, for this drug, for this drug. So you can't really develop a test unless you collaborate with us. So we do intend to actually start talking to particularly companies like Tempus, because we know that we are building a defensive moat with the technology which they could develop, but we're going to be there faster than them.
In a nutshell, your competitive edge is being, not being the first or the second in this sector, and riding the wave of disruption, right? Of tools, pricing, and availability disruption. Wow.
Exactly. So we are not the first on the market, which we are glad about. What we are bringing is the breakthrough in data analysis, because the first paper, actually, it was one of our co-founders group published about the possibility of extracting this valuable information, was published in 2017. So before that, people thought that it's actually impossible to use this 100% of tumor genome because there is too much information, no one can handle it. So it's only 2017. And once we've realized what's the potential of that, is that we actually founded MNM 2018 with Dominic, who was the first author of this work, because we knew that the time will come when people will ask this question. So why you are not using 100% of tumor genome? And we can explain why, and we can actually bring to the table everything what can be found there, what is clinically relevant, and which can change the trajectory of cancer treatment.
As a quick takeaway to other founders, look around, don't hurry into starting up a company if you think there might be some kind of a disruption beyond the horizon. But maybe this is not ideal for everyone. Just go ahead and, break things fast and so on. But could we say that you were lucky? I mean, of course, you realize this change, tectonic change, so to say, in like availability and disruption in price and so on, and like ability, computing power ability as well. But would you agree this is a little bit of a luck as well?
It's 90% of the luck. I mean,
okay, clear.
So that was, luck is incredible component. I like to think I'm clever. I mean, I hold a PhD, spent 7 years at Oxford.
Yes.
But then I do claim that luck is like 95% of the success we had so far. So enormous factor, hugely underappreciated.
Paweł, thanks. So we are done with the competitors. Let's move on to next round. The next round is a little bit like more relaxed, okay? A series of quick questions and answers, if you can, of course. I ask every founder, guys, you, Paweł, you run a very busy life, definitely. It's scientific part, like business part, competitive part, regulatory interactions, different markets, and so on. What are your own productivity hacks? And so far, what I mean is not the tools you're using, but like the ways or methods that you think are helpful to be productive.
So I think the key parameter at some point, particularly when you are not like a 5-person startup, and we are nearly 40 people at the moment. So the key thing is to invest in your people. So I actually don't do that much work anymore. What I'm doing, and what is, I think, most valuable, is I help other people to grow. And this is actually how I deliver, because the team we've created, the evolution people went through, the way they developed is enormous. And I've multiplied my ability to do stuff, to deliver, by actually helping other people to grow. And that would be my hack, to actually multiply by probably 5 or even 10x what I've been able to do at the beginning.
There's still this immersion period, or when you hire somebody new to the team, sometimes you have a strategy for the person evolution or person development. Sometimes you don't, you just react to the like positive feedback loops with this person and so on. Now, what I want to say, how do you hack then the evolution of a person in your company? Do you know that for a specific position or type of position, you have an algorithm how to introduce this person and increase the scope of duties? Or like how do you deal with that? How advanced you are in being scientific, maybe in bringing new people into the company? And what I mean is to find a shortcut to their effectiveness and their positive impact into the company. You do think of that, right? How do you do this?
Yeah, yeah, that's a holy grail of recruiting. I mean, no one has managed to figure it out. So I can tell you what we are doing, and it seems to be working quite well. So I do believe in every single person I hire. So every single person joining the company, I'm assuming that that's going to be a fantastic person, perhaps a CTO or CEO in 3 or 4 years. And I used to think that is naive. But actually what turns out is that because I believe in them, they start believing in themselves a little bit more. And then what you do is you have to push people and you have to explain to them what you are doing. And the way to push them is just promote them as quickly as you can. Unfortunately, loads of the people, or most of the people will say, that's not for me. I mean, I don't want to be a team leader. I don't want to go into managing 20 people. But some of them are actually going to come to you and say, oh, I love it. It's fantastic. And that helps them to find their niche. Loads of the people want to be individual contributors, and you have to just let them do that. They're going to be the foundation of your company. But some of the people are going to go and they're going to be gluing teams. So we have people who suddenly become like a network. So our communication is so much better because some of the people, they don't want to be managers. They are good in coding, but they kind of say, oh, I like to communicate. And it's fantastic because if you have 40 people, your communications is going to break. I mean, that's going to be enormously difficult aspect. But some people are going to naturally evolve into it. So keep pushing them by promoting them. Of course, it's painful if someone becomes a team leader and then after 4 months you say, sorry, it doesn't work. You have to go back. It is very painful, but because they understand that you gave them the chance, and it's not that we're going to fire the person. We're just going to have an honest conversation. What do you think about this position? How do you feel? And if you have an honest conversation, people are going to tell you, I don't like managing people. I'd love to be actually there. I like structure. So I like to go to regulatory. That's been fantastic to observe so many people finding their niche, which is compatible with the way they operate. And I can't imagine an interview process where you actually ask these questions or try to assess it. We just say, look, we grow so we double every 10 months. So every 10 months, MNM is twice as big as it was 10 months ago. So there is loads of space where people can go and find a niche. Believe it or not, but it's been 3.5 years, and it's been only recently was the first person who resigned from the company. 3.5 years, and you have a first person resigning. We had a couple of people who had to fire, yes, but there was a first person resigning because he thought that the environment is not perfect for his development. So we're actually pleased that he made this decision because it was a good decision both for him and for us. But it was kind of like a shock that someone can actually resign. We thought that we support people, but the environment is not for everyone. And you have to know it, that when you run a startup, this is very specific environment, extremely fast environment, and not everyone is going to like it. And if you don't articulate it clearly at the beginning, people may join and say, oh, it's going to be a stable work, 9 to 5, but it's not. It's very dynamic. The expectations are high, and everyone feels that. So
I know a founder who basically said to a new employee just to be hired, he asked about like life work balance and so on, and instead of exploding, the founder is like, yeah, I can promise you 9 to 5. Waited a couple of seconds, waited for reaction, no reaction, and then from 5 to 9. And then the conversation took another turn. Interesting. Paweł, yeah, interesting indeed. Like as a takeaway, give credit as soon as possible, credit of trust, I mean, and try to promote or test different roles in the company, which is possible in a quickly growing environment, a startup, a scaling stage, you could say. I mean, team scaling, definitely. Then you have these opportunities. Moreover, you have to do, or you must act like that, just because of the very nature of growing the team. You have no other choice, basically.
You have no other choice. I mean, if today you have a role of being a product manager, in 3 months that product may not exist. So what are you gonna do? I mean, you have to find yourself a new niche, I mean, people are quite good at it. For some, it's more difficult, but the dynamic environment is something lots of people appreciate.
Yeah, on the technical side, what tools would you recommend as like best of the best and like lifesavers? Software, apps, whatever. Business or private?
In terms of running an organization, Slack is fantastic if you ask about very specific tools, because if you're a team of 5, the communication is not an issue. But if the team grows, the communication becomes a massive issue. So, and then you ask a question, so how you communicate? The first instinct is, let's have a meeting. And then you have meetings all day long. So then you ask a question, so we have to do some work. Could we actually have some time to do some work? So we've realized that in order to have a great communication, you have to use tools. And email is not great. So we use Slack for communicating everyday stuff. We have a weekly newsletter, which is done by one of our people, and it's been actually fantastic to keeping the communication. We've tested loads of different tools actually to manage the projects, but we haven't found the great one. Some people are using Asana. We always leave it to our team leaders to decide how they're gonna run their teams. And what we see is that every team leader is using a different tool. Some of them are actually not using tools if they run the projects with the people working together hand by hand. But overall, from the technology point of view, you should be trying and searching for something which fits the bill. And we've tried quite a few tools. Some of them stuck, some of them we left behind. Yeah, so that would be my take-home message. Loads of options out there, and these are specific to particular companies, particular areas of even within the companies. As I said, some of the people are using Asana. For others, it's like, oh no, it's just slowing us down. So
interesting. And then you do not impose on the toolbox, right, for your teams. That's an interesting approach.
No, I mean, we are using a G Suite, which also gives you loads of options. So what we found is that having a G Suite shows you possibilities. Sometimes you use the tool which other companies are making more user-friendly or so. But the key thing would be to know what is out there. And often, if someone is not showing it to you, you're not going to explore it because you have your own way of operating. And you're going to say, oh, this is what I've been doing for years. So this is the right way. And what we have found is that if you leave team leaders to decide, and if you have like 10 team leaders in the company, they're going to talk one to another. And the good solutions are going to spread. And this is how we actually run the entire business. Loads of flexibility and responsibility in the hands of team members.
And the last question for this short Q&A, supposedly short Q&A. What's the best approach to enter a US market? I mean, US market and grow there, because you are there, based there already, right? Boston, I guess?
Yeah, so you have to move there. So we are now, so we are waiting for visa. So we go every now and then to have a conversation, network with people. And the advice I've had when I was talking to people about how we should approach it is you have to move there rather sooner than later. which of course is a massive challenge. It's a massive challenge because you have a team here, team relies on you, and then you have to go there and what? Are you gonna build a new team? Are you gonna link the teams together? And what we've decided to do is go there, start networking, and actually start building with a mindset of actually having a second company. So we're gonna rely on the Polish company a lot. There is loads of knowledge. There are fantastic people, but the market is very different. So the other advice I got, which I'm intending to follow, is you have to have an insider. So you have to hire the person who understands the market, perhaps have been there for years, done similar work, because otherwise you're going to be solving the problems which already been solved by so many people, but you just don't know about it. So move there, find the person who is an insider, and then try to actually iterate as quickly as possible, because this is a different market, and we know it already. There's a different market, and you have to find your niche. You have to find how to talk to clinicians, how the reimbursement system works, because of course it's different there. But insider should actually solve this issue.
Yes, Paweł, thanks. Let's move on to round 4, the company. In a very quick, in a nutshell, I understand the company was founded somewhere at the beginning 2018, February, March, right? And as far as the leadership, yourself, the CEO of the company, Katarzyna Zawadzka, COO, Paweł Stromwasser, CTO, Head of Technology Development, Alice Woźna, Head of R&D, I understand, Katarzyna Ferdin, Head of Polish Biobanking Center, Paula Dobosz, Head of Scientific Development, Michał Górczewski, Head of Finance, Michał Kozłowski, Head of Commercial. You have, of course, advisory board, Kelly Gordon, Francis Tony Guzzo, both PhD and scientists, definitely. And you mentioned you are altogether 40 people right now. What's the division? Yep. Yeah, what's the division of labor right now in the company? How would you structure, or what team, what company departments you would note for us? You would point out, yeah.
80% of people are working in R&D. I mean, we combine R&D with IT because most of the work is done at the interface between genomics, software engineering, AI, and that's the major effort. And last year, that was like 95%. So, but what we've realized is that if you have a strong R&D division, at some point you have to start thinking about actually delivering the service to your customers. You have to be building a network with the hospitals. So we are moving into a direction that we know what we are doing from technology point of view. We are automating the platform. So once the platform has been built, just to give you an example, it took us like more than 2 years to build a platform. So then it was 9 months to build one algorithm, which is making a decision about the particular cancer drug. For the second algorithm, it was 3 months. And now we are able to actually build another one within a month and a half. So now we are more limited by amount of data we have than by the capacity of a platform. So it means that we should be moving from working on a platform and improving it into partnerships. So we are actually spending a significant amount of time talking to hospitals, pharma companies, because we have to be validating the algorithm. The algorithm on its own is actually useless unless it's actually tested within the clinic and it is tested on the data which or the clinicians process or the companies process. So now there is still influx of people into the technology department, but what is growing so much faster than before is the BD partnerships, commercial part, customer service, because we have to have people who explain what we are doing. I mean, it's not that all of the clinicians are going to actually understand immediately what's the benefit. So this 80-20 is going to evolve into 70-30, probably 60-40, and so on and so forth. And at some point, as you know, from technology companies, a majority of people are going to be salespeople or the people running the business and not the technology. So we are following this path, but we are at the stage that still 80% of company's affair is about the technology.
Okay. And are you recruiting right now? If yes, for what roles?
Oh yeah, I mean, we are so we are recruiting all the time. I mean, the one of the issue we are facing here in Poland is that the pool of talent is limited a little bit. I mean, we exhausted it, so it's a great thing that we can switch to remote work. It has its challenges, but it actually simplifies things. Because, I mean, Poznan is a great city, 700,000 people, but how many great software engineers understanding genomics, more or less, you can have? I mean, you have to move. That was one of the reasons why we actually chose in Boston, because at least in terms of the talent pool, there's going to be very different glass ceiling. I mean, at the moment, the glass ceiling we have there is that we are a rather small company. And if you are a great software engineer, you rather go for a big sharks there. So we are recruiting all the time. I mean, software engineers, people understanding genomics, interface of biology and computational, and we're always hungry. I mean, we actually stopped opening positions. We just say we recruit continuously. If you are interested, just let us know. And this is on a rolling basis. So we change the position. Sometimes we need very specialized persons. So now, because we are in the process of completing move to the cloud. So most of the computational work is done in the cloud. So in order to actually scale your business in the cloud, you have to do a couple of specific things. So at the moment, for instance, we are recruiting an expert to complete the transition. But in terms of software engineers, always hungry. Experts in genomics, always hungry. Experts in oncology, always hungry. And we have to double in next 10 months. So remember, because we keep doubling every 10 months. So we are 40. So I have to be recruiting at least 4 people every month to actually double the company, which is quite a bit of a challenge, I have to tell you.
Yeah, to keep up with the tempo you yourself created, right, for the company. I have to ask this question, Paweł. I think I will not, I will regret if I don't. Let's say you resolve cancer anytime soon, 10, 20 years, or maybe even sooner, having in mind the new like technology advances, and maybe 5G will help you, and so on and so on. And now, beyond cancer treatment and tumors, what would you be interested in developing or in growing into, in maybe pivoting at some point? I mean, not pivoting, but let's say by producing, let's say, beyond cancer. Yes, this is a huge challenge and all of that. But let's imagine you are now on the brink of exhausting your potential in cancer treatment. What would be the next 1 or 2 areas?
I mean, if you think about what we are doing, is we are actually developing tools to analyze huge amount of data. And huge amount of data is giving you an understanding of what is happening. So as a trained biologist, I actually aim to understand cancer. So I deeply believe that the way to fight cancer is to understand it. And of course, it's not going to be us who will solve the problem, because there is huge amount of research which is done. Pharma companies are delivering more and more drugs. What we are doing is we're just matching drugs and patients. And what seems to be feasible is that in this 10, 15, maybe 20 years, we're going to have enough therapies to actually keep you on cancer drugs for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. So cancer is going to be a manageable disease, because if you know which treatment to use, you may get rid of that tumor, or it will be 100% controlled. But then, of course, there are some other challenges. I mean, aging, longevity. I mean, why are we only going to live 80 years? I mean, why not 90? Why not 150? Or the regenerative medicine. I mean, this is fantastic. I mean, when you think about a frog can grow its legs halfway through its development. I mean, why not work on the technology where when you lose an arm, you actually do something to grow the new one? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I think in
No, please focus on teeth. Please focus on teeth also somehow. That's not fair, I think, just to have 2 sets of teeth during the whole lifetime.
Perhaps, I mean, once we understand the biology, how it works. You can do things. I mean, the sky is the limit. I mean,
Okay.
next set of teeth, lost arm. I'm particularly interested personally in longevity. I mean, I spent quite a few years working on DNA repair, and what we know is that there is multiple factors involved in longevity, and DNA repair is one of them. So I like to imagine the world where there is no mutations at all, that you're gonna be aging slower, and your brain is probably gonna work much better at old age. So that would be my kind of long-term dream, if you ask me about where to move the resources.
That dream alone should keep you alive for the next 200 years or so. So stick to it. And I will be following your steps just to jump into your technology when you know secrets for longevity then. Let's move on to next round. Last but not least, Formula F3, as we call this, funding for the future, okay? So a quick wrap up as far as the funding right now. I understand $2.6 million is the approximate overall funding by now. Your last round was seed with investors like Black Pearls, VCs, RT, Ventures, and before that, a convertible note. Did I miss anyone on the investors team?
That, I mean, a couple of business angels.
Yes.
So we have quite a nice team of business angels supporting our efforts. But in terms of VC, we have two VC funds on board.
Yeah. What about your plans for the next round? When, how much, if you can share, of course, and what would be the plan? Or maybe what's also the milestone for you to reach when you think you're ready for the next round?
So, I mean, we are getting ready. The issue for us is that because of the revenue we've produced this year, we have no pressure to actually fundraise. And it's extremely fun situation to be in, really. I mean, it's so.
How much? Say it again. Say it again. How much the revenue was this year? And we are recording this let's say, second half of July 2021. Yeah.
So it's $3 million so far.
So past the kind of canonical MRR, good enough for Series A, but maybe deep technology or deep tech kind of companies have different multipliers, probably.
I mean, for most of the biotech companies, and we've been told that quite a few times actually, that you don't want to have revenue, because if you start producing revenue, you're going to be measured and analyzed in a different way. So most of the biotech companies try to limit the revenue as much as possible, because then the valuation is based on your potential. But at some point, when you have a revenue, it's going to be based on your potential and actually your business model.
I see. Okay.
But our thinking from the very beginning was that we have to bring the solution to patients as quickly as possible. And that actually meant that we started collaborating with some hospitals, institutes, in order to allow patients access, even if there was like a project who paid for the diagnostics. That was important for us, that people should have access to advanced diagnostics. So we actually had our first revenue in 2018. I mean, that was not much money, but that was the first dollars which we made 2018. And now we have the situation we are in is that we've delivered a couple of enormous projects, and we knew that they were enormous. We've proven that the platform is flexible. So, with papers in Nature, Science, it means that you actually have something which works. Recently, we've submitted a paper with first 1,000 Polish genomes. So now the Polish population is characterized, because for us, processing 1,000 genomes is like, boom. And vast majority of countries cannot actually deliver that. And we, like a small startup, just took 1,200 people, analyzed the genomes, and produced the genetic footprint of the Polish population. So we have evidence that we can deliver fantastic work. And now it means that we are talking to partners about doing some work together, but actually in this part of the world, there is more companies or partners coming to us than we trying to find some relations, simply because we've delivered already. So now the challenge is US. And what we've learned is that moving to US is very expensive. So if we were to stay in Europe, we would probably not be fundraising for a while, because the revenue we've secured for the rest of the year, and we are negotiating a couple of contracts which probably make the Polish company profitable. But the US is a very different story. And so we have like $1 million left on the US account. And we've even 2 people on the full time. And, we have the IP team filing patents, which are expensive. That's not going to last for long. So the goal is actually to secure funds to grow business in US. And the estimation is that what we would like to do is secure the portfolio of IP and actually bring the first product which we have to the market already. So we have to talk to FDA. We have to do quite a bit of validation. We have to find a partner for the lab, or develop or build the lab ourselves. And the cost to bring the product to US market, we've actually estimated at 20 million. So in order to grow the business in US, at the moment, we need an extra 20 million, or we're gonna go slowly with our organic growth, which is not optimal, because you have to be fast to compete with others.
Is it fair to conclude your next round would be, as far as financing, you would be looking for oscillating at more or less 20 million US dollars? Primary goal would be to facilitate and to speed up expansion and basically cover the costs of expansion in the US.
Exactly the case.
The receiver of the funds would be US-based company or Poland-based company?
It would be US-based company. So the holding structure at the moment is that US entity is a mother company to the Polish one. And the probably faster growing part is going to be the US entity. So
you're already past this phase of like moving headquarters to the, Delaware?
Yes. So we are formally incorporated in Delaware, and the mother company is the US entity.
Which in a way simplifies the process of fundraising for this amount, for this type of company, if you're already a US formally and so on, right? So that was the goal as well. Then I'm not worried. And I know then I'm not worried for you. So I think this is just a matter of time. Last question for this chat, basically, what's your personal exit plan, Paweł? And just don't give me this response, we're too early, there's lots of things to do and so on. At some point, you might have a honest discussion with yourself. What do I want at the end of the road?
So of course you think about this stuff, and I know quite well, simply because I actually know what's important for me, and this is how you should be starting this conversation with yourself. So ask what's important for yourself, what do you want to achieve, and then once you know what you want to achieve, you can actually move on. So from my personal perspective, building a machine which works is a key component. So we put a lot of effort into making sure that MNM is like well-oiled machine, where the machine actually doesn't need me. So this is kind of like a side effect of actually supporting your people. Because if you have great people, at some point you realize, oh, the machine doesn't need you anymore. So my exit strategy is to build an MNM which doesn't need me anymore, and I can go and build another thing. So I think I actually was hooked. So I used to be an academic with a PhD, 7 years of a postdoctoral experience. I actually even was a group leader at academia with my research team of 5. But I found this life fantastic. I mean, you build stuff extremely quickly. And I like to build another one after MNM is ready to live on its own. once it's ready, helping people, matching patients to the therapy are not going to be needed anymore, because it is organized in the way that it has to be self-sufficient.
Just as you are hooked to the side of the, let's say, intellectual activity, which is a combination of scientific approach, scientific knowledge, and business growth strategies and execution. And Paweł, I wish you all the best. Good luck with your US expansion, next financing round. And of course, in the name of all the humanity, wish you good luck with helping fight and win the fight for life without cancer. And then move on to other problems. Longevity is the next one. So I guess we will cover this when we are speaking about your next company. Thank you, Paweł. All the best.
Thank you, Alex. It was a pleasure.